Edward, thanks. Welcome. Thanks for having us here in Las Vegas.
That's great to have you. It's been a while, Michael. It's great to see you again. We've just been having an interesting talk about things from the Urantia Book and some of the papers there. You asked me to talk a little bit about kind of my journey and how I became kind of a teacher of happiness.
Yeah.
And the books and that. Basically, I originally went on a mission for the Mormon Church, 19 to 21, over to Japan, and had a lot of spirituality there. The Mormon Church was very conducive to spirituality.
Uh-huh.
When I hit about 27, I had I was still very spiritual then, but I guess it was after my first marriage and divorce. When I was 33, I had a lot of doubts and actually voluntarily asked to have my membership removed from the church. I just didn't feel like there was any one true church, and I was reading Swedenborg and a lot of Buddhism and a lot of different things, world religions, and trying to glean the truths out of those. I even had a bout with atheism, and I guess that was back when I was 24, 25. I was a little bit thinking along those lines at one point. Anyway, I came across the Urantia Book, very interesting. I was running an English school over in Japan, and I had just gone through a divorce with my first wife, and I was basically sleeping on a tiled floor. I didn't even have an apartment, the school that I was renting out to teach. And we just, this fellow came. I needed somebody to assist me on this one group lesson I had a little sign out. I was on the fourth story of the building, and just asked for a teacher, part-time. He came up and he was carrying this big blue book. And I asked him, what's that? And he told me a little bit about it and how he got it, which was quite miraculous. He'd been over in Hawaii, a construction worker. He'd left his home when he was 15 years old. He said he used to ride for a few miles every day up and down the coast. And one day he just felt like he kept riding and riding. He rode I think 17 miles. And off to the right side on the seacoast there was a guy standing on some crates and a number of people listening to him, and he was preaching. And he went over and he listened to the guy and he said he could not believe the words that were coming out of his mouth. And afterwards he asked, how did you become so wise? Where do you get this? And he said, well, I just memorized pages out of this book, the Urantia Book. And he ended up, giving that his book, and that became his book, basically. And then he actually ended up gifting it to me. I provided him, actually a friend was going to let me stay with him, and I said, no, you just stay with him. I'll just be here with the school trying to keep it going. And after I started reading, I started mostly in the Jesus papers, actually. And I was up till 3 or 4 every night reading and saying, where in the heck did this come from? Why couldn't I have had this, 10 years ago? I was just fascinated, totally took into it, made a complete move away from, that much interest in other religions, really.
And would this be around what year?
About 33. So I'm 69 now, so that's 36 years ago. Maybe about 87 or so. Yeah. And it definitely became my book, and I've read through it probably over 11 times now, from cover to cover.
I wonder who that was preaching.
Yeah, I don't know. Someone in California, but he must have a good memory.
Oh yeah, no, I think you said Hawaii.
Well, it was, he ended up going to Hawaii, I should say. That was before he came, but this I think was back when he was, I believe, this was back when he was still in California. Okay. And then he took the book to him with Hawaii. Okay. And he ended up going from carpenter to becoming a model over there. That's a long story too. But at any rate, I kind of, when I look back on my life, it's kind of like pre-Urantia Book and post-Urantia Book. It's that much night and day. I guess I was fairly intelligent. I remember even going through school, I clapped out of about a year of school. I was getting high score in a lot of my classes. People were telling me I was really smart. In fact, one time I took 65 credit hours in 2 quarters with full-time and part-time job, which they didn't know, or they would have never approved it.
Wow.
It still came out a 3.4 average because I had a bit of a photogenic memory, I suppose, too. But people tell me I'm smart, and then when I was about 26, 27, I remember just not ever being happy. It was always, I'll be happy when this or this happens. I call that destination obsession. And never happy with the now, and it didn't matter what I had, making a lot more money than a lot of my friends, maybe 4 or 5 times. I had dated some really attractive women, all this stuff. It just wasn't working. I went to a happiness seminar. This is something I should have told you before you got the Urantia Book. Went to this, this seminar wasn't a happiness seminar. It was one of those 3-day life dynamics type seminars. I think I paid equivalent of $1,000 for it. And it came to the end of the seminar, and they were just going around asking, what is it that you really want in life? And everybody's going around telling how they want this successful career, they want this, and that. And I started thinking to myself, I've had a sports car, I've attracted women, I'm making good money, nothing's making me happy. And it finally came to my place, and I said, I just want to be happy. And I was almost in tears. I just want to be happy. There wasn't any material thing that was working. And so then I really went on my quest for happiness. Started interviewing exceptionally happy people. Checking out different religions, reading a lot of books, self-actualization, self-improvement, whatever. And actually, over about a 17-year period, I interviewed over 50 exceptionally happy people, both in Japan and in America. It culminated in my book 23 years ago in Japan, 10 Habits of Happy People, and also introduced HQ, or Happiness Quotient. So that's kind of how I got started with that.
That's a lot of research.
Yeah. And I changed pretty dramatically, so I figured myself, if I could become happy, that I could, maybe I was qualified to actually teach it now, because I had been so unhappy before.
Yeah.
I not only had the over-analytical, thing going on, but I was, when I was younger, I'd been very sensitive, shy, almost introvert, very fearful, all those different things. So I didn't tend to, get happy really easily.
Yeah.
I kind of stayed to myself, and I had a lot of animals and things that when I got home from their school, I'd take care of them. But anyway, I changed really quite dramatically. I was making changes, from 18 on, but then that really changed me. I interviewed people and tried to incorporate whatever happiness habit they had. Turned out to these 10 habits of happy people and other things, and it made a huge change. And the Urantia Book is probably the biggest single change, but those things combined. I started doing seminars all over Japan. I got on TV and had a little radio program too, although the radio program was more, it was called Edwards Anything Goes English. Did you feel not to get so uptight about, English? Japanese are so perfectionist, and so they don't even end up talking, even though they've had 6 years of, taking school, taking English. And yet you say, hello, how are you? And they just get, uptight and they don't quite know how to answer. So I said, just say anything, just piece the words together. And even if it's from a chop, which is anything goes, they'll probably understand a lot more than you think. And I had a 10-minute spot, and I'd have them take a complete beginner, just remember some things you learned back in junior high and high school, just say it and see if I understand. And say, okay, this is what you meant, right? Okay, here's how to say it right. And that was good, you actually communicated. And it was pretty popular little program.
Huh.
But just learn how, if you have reasonable intelligence, your efforts, of course you want to make a reasonable amount of money, although people get obsessed in that area, but it should be about how to make yourself happy, because, really, what's the point of making the money if you don't become happy? And I've known, the multi-hundred millionaires that weren't happy, weren't dissatisfied, and Tony Robbins, I know he's counseled to multi-billionaires that were going to commit suicide. Obviously, with Elvis Presley, I sold his second home, and he basically committed suicide with 12 different drugs that all had overdose levels, prescription drugs and that. So it obviously doesn't work there. You have to actually learn how to be happy. And of course, the best, most sound way of becoming happy is self-actualization, or bottom line is becoming more Jesus-like. So the more Jesus-like a person becomes, the happier they become. And when I was doing my dissertation with Kennedy Western University, it wasn't fully accredited, but we did the product exams and everything. I had the relationship between happiness and self-actualization. And basically my premise was, and I'm sure it's true, is that the more self-actualized you become, the more that perfected best you that you become. And especially with the virtues we call the fruits of the Spirit, the more courage, the more empathy, the more loving understanding you are, the more balanced, the more logical, all those traits, you're just going to be happier. You're going to appreciate life more. And I definitely found that to be true in my life. I look back in my 20s and my mindset and everything, and now I compare it to the 60s. And you should be able to. It's sad if a person looks back and they're wishing they could go back to high school. They're wishing they could go back. You haven't progressed if those were happier days than what you've got now. So and a lot of people don't progress, unfortunately, and then they just get older and they don't really mature. So yeah, those probably were better days because you had a better body. But if you mature correctly, you'll actually be appreciating life more, you'll be enjoying more, you're more balanced. You know, you can smell the roses, you know, you appreciate small things. You learn how to, you know, entertain yourself better. And then the biggest thing, of course, is learning how to actually enjoy, you know, working with people, helping people, you know, being a benefit, have a purpose to be. And of course, when I teach happiness and I teach health, I really do want to benefit the person. And that's, you asked about coaching. What I try to do with the person is I find out as much as I can about that person, their strengths and weaknesses. And I think if I could go into their body, like for 1 year, or even 8 or 10 months, I know I can make tremendous changes. First of all, physically, I know that you have to have a certain amount of self-discipline, as you know, the acting of all human virtues. But with the mindset and the understanding of the health that I have, which the last 50 pages of my recent book, that How to Become a Happiness Millionaire Today, you can actually, you know, really become super healthy, and you know, it makes a total change in what you're doing. And I could affect that change if I could get in their body with the understanding that I have. And of course, happiness wise, you change their, you know, nitpickiness or perfectionist traits or pessimism or whatever it might be, just keep them happy. And you can make profound changes there too. But the reason I started thinking that way was because it says in the Urantia Book, you know, even the Bible as well, I believe, take upon yourself the mind of Jesus. And of course, that will serve us well. And the more we can't do what Jesus did if we don't have, you know, the brain power that he had, we don't have the experience and everything, but we can live by the means, it says, that he lived. And so we actually can live lovingly, looking at life, you know, the way he did, trying to find service opportunities, being patient, being understanding, being courageous. So I would say, you know, I really want to take upon the mind of Jesus. No, please take the wheel, so to speak, or take over. And interestingly, it does say in the Urantia Book, as you know, that it becomes the thought adjuster and then eventually becomes thought controller. It's, you know, thought adjuster, thought changer, thought controller. Or things thought changer first, isn't it? And then thought adjuster, thought controller. So really get more and more, so we're so connected with the thought adjuster or the fragment of God within, which is another interesting term that Peace Pilgrim used. And I think I might have talked with you a little about Peace Pilgrim. I wrote about her in my Happiness book. I devoted the last 50 pages.
Did you interview her?
Unfortunately, I didn't actually interview while she was alive. My mom and I went back to California and interviewed John and Ann Rush, who had known her for over 30 years, and she'd always drop into their California home for a month or so, and they'd arranged meetings and that. And we plied them with questions for 3 days and got a lot of material about her and some of her letters and different things. And then I ended up, of course she has a book that's out, the Peace Pilgrim book, which is everything free, they offer it. And I'd have to say, in the last 100 years, modern day, she may have been the single most highly developed, self-actualized, well into her first circle person, at least that I know of. I mean, I studied Albert Schweitzer, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, you know, a lot of the greats. And just according, Lava was another one, considered the greatest educator, most traveled man. I had a struggle between him and Peace Pilgrim. They were both amazing. I ended up doing it with Peace Pilgrim just because hers is so generic. She didn't say, in no religious terms, everything. It wouldn't turn anybody off the way she talked about religion. And I honestly believe that the one that talks about 15 previous inhabitations of a thought adjuster is, you know, you have a person on the planet that has this experience. I really think it could possibly have been Peace Pilgrim, the way her life unfolded, how generic it is, and it keeps expanding. It's into many different languages now. And she just kind of laid out a plan, you know, for self-actualization and how you actually become that, what we would say is, you know, more Jesus-like person. And she seemed to have all those type of traits too. Everyone that I talked with, and I did interview people that had met her, a lot of times they say she was the most surreal person they'd ever met, the most in the now person, you know, caring, energetic, happy, joyful, all those things. And that apparently was like 24/7 from morning till night, ever from the time she was 44 on until she passed away at 73. It was a car accident going to giving a speaking engagement.
Wow.
But she kind of went out quickly, which is probably good because she never accepted any money from anybody, it had to be freely given.
Wow.
An amazing story if you haven't read Peace Book.
Yeah, wow. I do have the book. I think maybe you gave it to me.
I probably did. Yeah, I'd say the Urantia Book and the Peace Book are the two most influential books I've read as far as personal improvement and self-actualization.
Yeah. So the Urantia Book's also played a role in your teaching, would you say, and your books and things?
Yeah. I don't know if you read mine. Like I said, I might have had a lot of typos and things, but it's always
I've only gotten it recently, but I've read some parts of it. Yeah.
Well, I have a very logical orientation. I don't know if I prided myself on being logical, but I always try to be logical. That actually allowed me to use my logic. Once you came upon the Urantia Book. Before, you have these belief systems and these glasses you wear that you see it through them, and so even if you're a very logical, intelligent person, you can't fully use your brain power because you're presupposing things that just aren't true, and you're not seeing reality for the way it is. So the Urantia Book, it kind of removes the safety blanket in a sense when you totally delve into it.
It removes the what?
The safety blanket. A lot of times we just go, God, if we just pray, everything's going to be taken care of. And I was doing that actually before I had the divorce. Just before I got the Urantia Book too. I had a divorce come on. I was $80,000 in debt over in Japan, basically homeless, sleeping on the tile floor there. I mean, everything was just crashing. But I lost my train of thought there. Let's see, what was all those things? That's what I was saying. I said something about that. Anyway, I can't remember exactly what it was, but all those things happening, and then the transition, maybe it's the transition from that into,
the Urantia Book.
That's see all those things that before, and then I realized that just praying was not going to bless your flocks and give you riches and everything else. It doesn't work that way. And so I had a stark realization of that, and I realized even when I did make, within a year and a half of that, I went from basically homeless, $80,000 in debt, to becoming a millionaire, is I just followed the rules and laws of not only of nature, but of business. And I even got my idea in the Urantia Book on how to make money. I had a part about organized channels of wealth and becoming an intricate part of that. And I said, okay, where's the organized wealth flowing right now? And I noticed they had $13 billion in real estate that had been purchased from the Japanese over to American properties. And I said, okay, there's money flowing from Japan. I'm in Japan. How do I become an intricate part of that? Integral part, I think it was. So I become a real estate agent. So I went back and got my license in Utah, Nevada, and Hawaii. And then again, started getting clients, and then I ended up, as I told you before, I had about a 15-month period, made probably $1.5 million in commissions, and then basically retired when I was 33, 34. But I had to just, a lot of times I'd catch myself on the first commission. It was a $209,000 commission supposed to come in. But this is after a series of smaller properties I did. And I remember I just was praying to God and said, okay, He's going to take care of it. And I was reading the Urantia Book saying, you need to do the same things that they're doing. It doesn't matter whether it's a good person or a bad person, there's certain rules or laws. And I said, well, I better do the things that they would do. And they probably would want to alleviate this person's fear. This is a big purchase. And so I made calls saying, do you have any questions? I did things, but I didn't just leave it up to God. I made sure it went through. And then by the second or third time, I was kind of like cookie cutter. I knew that, I had confidence that it would. But if I just kind of left it to God, so to speak, there's a very, very good chance we would have had cold feet and they would have dropped out. The first purchase is all the way over there, and they haven't really been to America much.
So you have some wealthy Japanese people that were buying properties in the United States.
Yeah, I had probably the equivalent of about 180 million, 600 million, 800 million, three main clients I worked with, until the bubble broke and then the lending stopped over in Japan, and then things dried up. But by that time, I figured, well, I had enough, and so I retired, basically retired financially.
Yeah.
But then I think I told you a part of the story. I kind of kept some employees going on and helping them with their business, and then I had some land that I had a loan on some land, and then land crashed 80%. And then I had the divorce happen, about 12 or 13 years ago. And of course, the financial collapse of 2008, 2009. Yeah. And basically went down to zero. And so I had to kind of build it back up. I haven't built it back to the same degree
Wow.
It would have been, over probably 2 million in today's dollars. But I'm happy, as I said, now, even with a few thousand a month, net income, without loans and that, and my partner, my wife, she takes care of all the expenses and pays for half, pretty much half of all the expenses for condo utilities and things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with that, and actually kind of trying to live an example. Part of in the book it talks about living, a very happy life under $3K a month, and that's kind of supposing, of course, that you have things paid off that's without debt. There's no car debt, there's no housing debt, things like that. And of course, if you've got a partner with you, it require them probably helping on half the expenses, and of course buying your own food and different things like that. But it's, so far it's working out pretty good. Vegas, there's a lot of inexpensive and free things you can do. We were even able to, attend like the summer league games and some Bronny James and the NBA stars for about, $64. It's not too bad. And we got the NBA who's coming in, I think, for $50. We got that. We have the WNBA team here, about $10, $15 a ticket. We're able to go to that. A lot of free events. I mean, if you really look around meetup groups, there's a lot of things you can do there.
Yeah.
And of course, sports, obviously playing pickleball, tennis.
And you're thinking about breaking a world record.
Oh yeah. I've been trying, kind of more or less trying this. I won't go into the long story, but I did just a little bit of track in high school, only 2 meets, and I did actually take first place in the mile and the 2 mile pre-season. And I really hadn't worked out much, so I got kicked off the team. And that was because I had a youth conference for the church at the time, had pre-engagement. The coach was a hard-nosed, actually former NFL football player. He said we lost the meet the next one because I didn't attend. He says, if you don't attend, you're off the team.
Okay.
And it's been pretty miserable in the running because it's not so easy to run that. But I took the church thing, and I thought that was more important. And then I never ran for many years. It kind of turned me off to that. And then I started in the Masters and found that I was quite competitive, did that 40 years. And my body wasn't changing much because I teach what I call half of age super health. And so even though I'm 69, I think of myself now as really 34 or 35. And that has a psychological effect. And I talk about that in the last part of my book. But anyway, I was, doing that, and it just eventually worked out to where, let's see.
You ran a 5 minute.
Yeah, the 5 minutes. Well, the 40 years old and older, that I became competitive because my body hadn't changed, as I was mentioning. And so, as I was aging less than my competitors, I was really probably doing half or a third of the workouts they were doing. Winning state meets and getting up, some really pretty good records. And I keep getting closer and closer to the world record, and I figured it's maybe just a matter of time before, if I don't age as much as everybody else, then sometime by the time I hit 60, 70 or whatever, I think I should be able to make it, because I wasn't willing to quite put in the dedication and the time that a lot of them were doing.
Yeah.
And so coming out, flash forward 69, I don't even have to, all I have to run is a 5 minute, 19-second mile. Before we're talking like 4 minute, 20 seconds, 4 minutes, 36, that type of thing. And even the 65 to 69, 4 minute, 56. But the 70 to 74 is only 5 minutes, 19. That's 25-second difference. And I know I can get down to a 5:19 if I just avoid injury.
Wow.
So I hope here in October when they have the World Huntsman Games that I'll be able to run the equivalent of that there, and then just hold it, until I turn 70.
Yeah.
And then hopefully run the mile and the 1500. And I'm actually better in the shorter distance, interestingly. I have more fast twitch muscle, but I don't want to get injured, so I try to make records, going on down.
Yeah. Wow.
And then jiu-jitsu, I think I mentioned that. I just found, I know that I've always been strong, pound for pound, and my quickness is pretty much, a lot of it's still remaining. And so the coach or the teacher, a couple of weeks ago, 26-year-old I told you about.
Yeah.
That's actually outweighs me in that. He probably was very impressed and said I should reach through the 60-year-old plus group, and they do have a 60-year-old plus group. So that's something else I'd like to maybe do in the next year.
Yeah.
Just got the 1 year goals now, and then use that as a platform, hopefully, to be able to get people more interested in health and happiness.
Yeah.
And you have to watch your goals too, because if you get to say, I want this, I want to be the world record, that becomes very egocentric.
Yeah.
So it has to be more of a thing that I'd like to do that so that I can be a more useful tool.
Yeah.
And so that I have a bigger platform, that I can talk with and influence more people. I'm trying to keep your motives more pure. And if I don't do it, I'm very happy with the life that I have. I don't have to have those things. I've got a great relationship with my wife, good health, we enjoy life, very self-contained.
Yeah.
But if I have the ability, to do it on a larger scale, then I'd like to do that too.
So are you doing like courses or I think I've seen on social media maybe that you had posted something a while back about that you were doing maybe seminars or lecturing or something like that?
Well, You're the Project, that's the one that the other website I have, is youaretheproject.com. We started a program there, and it's, long story short, it's a very motivational program that makes you basically self-access. It makes you work on your health and all these different things. Happy body, happy mind, happy money. Those are kind of the three main things in happy relationships. And so you set goals in those different areas to make improvement in that. And you actually get paid for accomplishing your goals. It's actually set up, and this is a dirty word with most people, but it has an MLM component. But the thing that is so different, it's like having a hammer. You hit a person in the head, the hammer is bad, and that's what MLM has done. It's overpriced product. Of course, people would buy something they wouldn't buy. This is using the hammer to actually hit the nail in. So you don't get paid unless you actually accomplish your goals. So you literally cannot get paid. It doesn't matter how many people you might introduce, or the percentages go up and you have that going like that. You don't get paid each month if you didn't actually accomplish those exercise goals you had during the week. Or you say you're going to learn Spanish, you're going to do 30 minutes a day, whatever it is. If you can't honestly say at the end of the month that you've done those goals, then you don't get paid for that month. And so we found it very motivational that people do actually accomplish their goals. And so it's all set up to basically using the hammer or using MLM to motivate people, because people do get motivated with money.
Yeah.
They lose weight. There's a 5 times greater chance of losing weight if there's money involved in bed or whatever. So it's a program I have, but it has to be done. I was doing it on a shoestring budget. And so there's another reason I wanted to make the world record in that, is it makes for a great story, and I've got my book out now, to approach a sponsor and try to get at least $1 million, $1 to $2 million for 20 to 40% of the stock, and then do it the way it needs with the right staffing and do layout programs. So that's my other goal. Come if I can make the world record, or even if I don't, I'll approach investors at that time to run that program. And it's also built as a happiness program too. So it's a self-actualization happiness program.
Yeah. You've been through a couple divorces.
Three actually.
Yeah, 3. And when I think about friends who've been going through divorces in recent years, it's not it's tough, and being married can also be tough, of course, too. But have you done much of your research and you're kind of teaching about like relationship tips, that kind of realm?
Yeah, we definitely cover relationships, and I have a couple of chapters in the book about that. Interestingly, let me just throw this out first. Divorces, of course, death in the family, different things can be very traumatic. And you look at the charts, and it usually takes 12, 18 months or longer to kind of get back to normal for a lot of people. I didn't experience that, even though I've been married for 25 years with my third marriage. It's very long, it's quite a long marriage, especially today.
And 2 daughters?
Yeah, 2 daughters, one from previous marriage and one from that marriage. But anyway, people didn't even know. Go ahead.
And were they all Japanese, the previous marriage?
No, the first one was American.
Okay.
My older daughter. And anyway, with that divorce, nobody even knew about it until a few weeks after. And people, I was carrying on with my work, I was doing everything I did, and they were telling me I was in denial. But I had been teaching happiness for a number of years before that. And I use a powerful tool called thankful comparisons.
Yeah.
And so I compare, like with my divorce situation, of course you can compare around the world. Somebody is over there starving or doesn't know where their next meal is, or in a war-torn country doesn't know if they're going to be killed. It could be Afghanistan or wherever. But one that I would always use is a powerful thankful comparison. And this one definitely in the book, look up that chapter and read that. I have my free ebook there too. it's just amazing how that will change with your perspective. You think you've got a huge problem, but with me, I would use the Christopher Reeves example, where he was on a horseback riding, and he, of course, became a quadriplegic actually. And to me, especially during sports and loving to run around and do things, that would just be the worst thing in the world I could ever imagine. So when I had the divorce, and on top of that, you're basically going from millionaire down to zero. Most of the assets were over in Japan. And so I thought sometimes I'd be tempted to feel sorry for myself.
Yeah.
I remember a couple of occasions I'd be sitting on the back porch. It was a mobile home I had there overlooking the Virgin River. And I'd start almost having tears and feeling bad, and I'd actually literally slap myself in the face and say, "Poor Edward, come on, get over this. This is a first world problem, not a third world problem." And just imagine if there was a 60-foot steep embankment in front. What if you were to slip and fall down this embankment and break your neck, and you wake up the next day in a hospital as a quadriplegic? You know you'd be begging God to go back to yesterday when all you had to deal with was losing some money and a divorce. And so I'd always just have that snappy right back, say, no, this is not a major problem, and you still have abilities, you can still do things. So I never really went through that, that grieving period or that difficult period, because I had learned a lot of these happiness tools, and there's other ones too that I used. And so I went through that very smoothly, and I think that can be very helpful for people too. And there's a number of other things that tools you can use. But your question on the relationship though was, what exactly was it again? Do I do lessons on that, or do I study areas?
It's just, I guess I don't need to, we could talk maybe more about that, but another thing that's interesting is when you think about, you look at the big picture, then you think about mortality, that I tend to think about that a lot lately, that that our time is just so limited. Again, I'll listen to the adjuster papers, and they'll say, a human life, you're born and live and die in a relative instant of time, they say, more or less. So that's a gift Urantia Book readers have, is that they at least have that beautiful perspective.
Right.
But do you find when you teach to other people, do you kind of incorporate that eternity perspective for them, or?
I try to, if it gets to something like that, if somebody is getting close to death or whatever, you first of all find what their religious belief is. If they don't even believe in God, it's a little more tricky, but I've actually very much enjoyed working with atheists and agnostics. In fact, I was the first person, at least in the Vegas branch, that was actually, it sounds like an oxymoron, but they have an atheist church. I was one of the first or God-believing people that they actually teach or give a talk at their atheist church. And the reason they did that is because they said they found that most people that really believe in God and religion were too logical in some of the different areas. And I was very logical and very scientific. So yeah, I agree with you on a lot. Most of the stuff you're saying here, I don't think God goes around and blesses this person and does this or that. I think God is an internal thing. I don't think we can learn what stocks to pick or getting extra help in business. I mean, it's got to be. But I do experience this internally, and happiness studies show that belief in God will make you happy. So from a pragmatic standpoint, you might want to at least entertain that, because you do want to be happier. That's logical.
Yeah.
And so I would kind of approach them from that point, just try it out from an internal standpoint. And I actually did get 2-3 people. I was reading the Urantia Book, which was interesting. And then spoke, how to be logical, but yet to not throw away the opportunity to have inner peace and the feelings of love and joy and those different things that can come from that, and then of more of an altruistic type living.
Have you introduced many people throughout your life to your Urantia Book?
Yeah, a lot, dozens, I guess. I imagine I've given out 50 or 100 or more books. Some bear fruits, a lot of them don't. But there's quite a number that are still.
Have you kind of changed in your approach over the years, or have you had a specific approach?
I suppose it's changed somewhat. I was always of the scientific mind. With me, the work that Halbert was doing there was always powerful to me. I call them corroborations of the Urantia Book, because I've become quite healthy healthily skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
And so just because somebody claims something's a revelation, I'm not going to believe it at all. But the red flags will come out and say, I really doubt it. Show me, how you can even say that. And yeah, there may be some things that sound inspired and some beautiful writings, and yeah, I would take those as truths, but I wouldn't believe that it was necessarily revelation, especially when they're talking about things, historical things.
Mm-hmm.
And all the way back from the dinosaur days and evolution and the discovery of fire and all these things. But you have a book like the Urantia Book that over time, more and more science is catching up to the content in the Urantia Book, things that were not known back in 1955. And I always mention the one of discovery of fire. Back in 1955, it was thought out as closer to 250,000 years ago, in a very different part of the world. In the Mesopotamia area, about, it's been maybe 15, 20 years ago, they found some sites where they dated back now to 750 to 800,000 years ago, getting much closer to Andon and Fonda, back what was 987,000 or whatever. So I give a few examples like that. So, in this book, how could anybody have known that? It's not just one thing. It's like throughout all different types of science and anthropology and different things. So I said that's the thing that anchors me. If I ever have doubtings about the Urantia Book, although you can't write it any better than it is, it's absolutely amazing, the content in there and the detail. Even back in Jesus's life and everything, the coinage dates. And, that to me always anchors me back. The scientific part, I can't explain that away. I just can't. And so I try to use basically that type of thing, but I said, but really though, the Jesus papers and these things, it's going to change your life. And it's not going to be like the Bible, at least in my experience, where you have certain scriptures you've read that didn't really apply to everyday life, like praying and thinking everything you think. It'll tell you that prayer is not going to do that for you. It'll tell you internally, it tells you what prayer can and can't do, the providence of prayer. But you'll become much more realistic, you become much more effective, you become much more balanced. And you'll probably end up thinking, like I do, pre-Urantia Book and post-Urantia Book, as far as being effective and making things work.
Wow. Wow. Well, should we wrap up and check on the kids?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Edward.
Oh, thank you.